lagi Anda akan menyaksikan The Big Idea Forum in association with
Indonesia is a living mosaic, a tapestry woven from the threads of over 1,100 ethnic groups, each contributing its own colors, patterns, and stories. From the highlands of Papua to the bustling streets of Jakarta, our diversity is not just a fact. It is our strength, our identity, our pride. Our culture is more than a collection of memories. It is a living force that drives innovation, shapes the future. Traditional Indonesian arts like batik now feature on the global runways. Gong craftsmanship of Java, once a symbol of royal ceremonies, has been reimagined into contemporary art and music experiences, showcasing how our culture is constantly adapting to the future while staying true to its roots. The law on the advancement of culture is a commitment to future generations, ensuring the preservation and growth of our cultural heritage. The government actively empowers local communities to protect tradition while fostering innovation for economic development. Education is the key to unlocking the full potential of our cultural legacy. By instilling a deep appreciation for our heritage in the hearts of the young, we ensure that the values, wisdom, and creativity of our ancestors will continue to inspire and guide future generations. Indonesia's cultural heritage is already making waves on the global stage, but we're only just beginning to tap into its full potential with strategic promotion and protection of our cultural assets. We can ensure that the wealth within our traditions benefits not just a few, but all Indonesians. Our culture, our identity, our legacy. These are our competitive strengths in a rapidly changing world. Beyond the arts, our heritage fosters global diplomacy, attracts millions of tourists seeking authentic experiences, and drives the creative economy. The Big Idea Forum on Legacy to Legacy, Transforming Indonesia Through Cultural Power, is a pivotal platform. Together, we will transform Indonesia through the enduring power of cultural heritage, ensuring that our nation's story is one of strength, unity, and limitless possibility.
Ladies and gentlemen, a great big welcome to the Big Idea Forum, where we bring great minds together, and it's truly an honor for me to have you all here today as we gather to explore a vital and transformative topic, which is legacy to legacy, transforming Indonesia through cultural power. Now, culture is not merely a reflection of our past, but also a living, breathing force that has the potential to drive our future. And today's discussion will shine a light on how culture, which is our traditions, our heritage, and creativity can become a strategic asset for Indonesia's development, fostering not only economic growth, hopefully, but also social cohesion and a national pride. And I'm very, very privileged to have with us a distinguished panel of speakers, each of whom will bring a wealth of their expertise in the areas of cultural heritage, policy and development. Now, let me introduce them to you. We have, first of all, Hilmar Farid, the Director General of Culture from the Ministry of Education, Culture, Research and Technology. Now, Pak Hilmar has been at the forefront of shaping Indonesia's cultural policy. Very big welcome, Pak Hilmar. And we also have Moe Chiba, Chief of the Culture Unit at UNESCO Jakarta, whose work focuses on safeguarding cultural heritage while promoting its role in sustainable development. Moe, a very big welcome to you. Rahmayani Faisal, a longtime friend of mine and also a renowned Indonesian artist whose works challenge and inspire us to reflect on culture, identity and social issues. Yani, very big welcome to you. And Kanjeng Gusti Pangeran Adipati Aryo Mangkunagara ke-10, Pengageng Pura Mangkunegaran. And ladies and gentlemen, we have a royalty in our presence, a respected cultural leader, young but who plays an important role in preserving Indonesia's rich cultural traditions. Kanjeng Gusti, or should I call you Royal Highness? Welcome to the show. Last but not least, Summer Shia, bringing a breath of sunshine as our country director of the British Council Indonesia, who brings a global perspective on how cultural exchange can foster innovation and development. A very big welcome, Summer. And as this is a platform for collaboration, there will also be an opportunity for all of you to comment, ask questions, and also perhaps share with us some of your perspectives to our panelists. So, well, let's begin the discussion. And first of all, of course, I would like to invite Pak Hilmar as our Director General of Culture. And I think we've seen in the video, you know, our culture, and I have to say, it always moves me when I see this. Our culture is our strength, our identity, and our pride. The question is, what do we do with it? And how can it help us make our country a great one? So, Pak Hilmar, as our Director General of Culture, tell us, what have you been doing and what has been done to promote Indonesia's culture, your milestones? And I know that there is now a new law for the advancement of culture. Perhaps share with us some of these things.
Okay, first of all, thank you for having me. Let's start with the law number 5 for 2017 on the advancement of culture. Since it's an important milestone in our journey, as it gives shape to the somewhat amorphous field called culture, right? And the debate actually dates back to the 1980s. I mean, you probably remember Ibu Haryati Subadio. She was the Director General at that time. Already started the discussion, and the key question was, what is culture? Like, how to define it? No? What are the borders of culture? And if you look at the academic definition of culture, then you will end up in a whole mumble jumble of ideas, etc. So our starting point back in 2017, when we debated that at the Parliament, was let's have a more operative definition of culture, no? So that you can start to handle this complex of practices, thoughts, ideas, institutions, and all that. No? So that was the starting point. And then the next question was how. And basically 2 ideas, protect and promote. So basically to protect the cultural wealth that you have, to identify the wealth, to get to know what you have actually. No? So that was really put emphasis in the law itself. So local governments are now tasked to document cultural activities, cultural wealth that they have in their own region, etc. No? And it's still ongoing. So that's one thing. The other thing is promotion. Promotion means here to develop our cultural tradition in different forms. You have like contemporary responses to all that. So that's there. For what purpose? That's the next question. No? And there's 4 things in the law. First is about identity, that our cultural activities should strengthen national identity, a more inclusive culture, etc. Second is cultural resilience. And we know that our society here is composed of, as you said, like heard before, 1,100 ethnic groups living in 22 different ecosystems. No? So they have a really great ability to adapt to changing environments. And we really need to tap that energy to understand our strength. No? So cultural resilience, the second purpose of that. The third one is connected to economy. Here, where cultural and creative industries fall in. And the last one is cultural diplomacy. So that's basically the realm. And having this law really helped us, no? Because we need changes in our institution, changes in the way we do things. My approach when I entered the government is to do less, yeah, in executing yourself. I mean, the ministry is not supposed to create festivals or organize dances. Let creative people do that. Your task is to help them to do that. No, so regulation is a major function, yeah, and then empowerment, meaning you provide grants, funds, and in the law there's a specific article that regulates about the establishment of an endowment fund. And thank God, I mean, it happened. Then after 2018, now 2020 it started functioning, and now you have 9,000 proposals from different communities in different fields. Very exciting, and to see the what you call that, the interest and also the enthusiasm, no, by having this initiative. So that has changed. In terms of channeling resources, that has also changed. My policy was basically to shift that from the hands of the government that used to execute itself to the hands of the actual artists, cultural practitioners. Now, there was a major shift in that. And the last one, I think, is about organization. Before, it was, you had a special unit for art, special unit for cultural heritage, etc., which is good, but it creates a culture of silo. Yeah, because then art people don't really know what the cultural heritage people are doing, etc. No? So, and yeah, it is problematic because, as we know, art in Indonesia is connected to cultural heritage. I mean, you can see Borobudur is full of artistic expressions, etc. And people, artists, also take these cultural heritage as their source of inspiration.
Just very quickly, I mean, shouldn't culture be sort of a vision for the entire country? It should be, sort of led. It should be a top priority. And I'm thinking of, for example, countries like South Korea, how as a nation in the last couple of decades, they've really, as one, whether it's from the top government to the people, they've actually moved together in order to promote their culture. I mean, look, we've seen, South Korean, the dramas, in the culinary, the music, everything. Isn't this something that we can do with Indonesia? And can the law of advancement of culture do something like this? Or do we need something much bigger?
It certainly contributes to that. I mean, the basic problem, I think, that we have right now is not really recognizing the wealth. And I think the problem is also knowledge and information and all that. Indonesia is one of the 3 biggest biocultural diversity in the world. Amazon, Central Africa, and Indonesia, only 3 in the world. But if you look at policy documents, it has been rarely described as such. Yeah, it's just Indonesia. I mean, if you look from an economic perspective, when you go to Sumatra, you go to like a forest. From an economic perspective, say mining or plantation or all that, you would see it as a land like that.
A land
not
to be exploited.
To be exploited, to be cut off. And then, but if you look at the wealth that it actually has, then you will get a completely different viewpoint. Yeah. Same in marine resources. I just got back from Alor, as I told you. Yeah. So there people have that kind of knowledge, but they are not part of the policy-making process.
Not part of the wealth earning.
Right. Yeah. So that is the problem. And I think culture here can actually help to bring this together, to provide a platform where all these things can be discussed, enter policy, of course, but yeah, to tap the great resources, which is knowledge, that is resided in the minds of the people. So that is, I think, one of the problems that we have now to break that barrier. No?
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think this is definitely a priority for the next government to really think about. Now, let's get to you, UNESCO. I mean, you know, just tell us from sort of a more global perspective, how do you see Indonesia and in terms of its wealth, not just the tangible, but also the intangible? And what do you think we should do about it? And how can we really capitalize on all of these riches? And then there are riches that we have.
Sure. Of course, I'm not in a position to give lessons to anybody. First of all, thank you very much for having me. And I wish to begin by saying that I'm a fan of your law, number 5, and your approach and visions. You know, in Asia, for a long time, arts, culture, and heritage have been long considered as something to be studied, admired, and put into the museums, right? And only for the consumption of the elites and intellectuals and sophisticated people. And for that reason, if I look at the traditional policies that existed in the Ministry of Cultures across the world, it's always focused on documentation, research, conservation, and exhibition. That was it.
Like the past.
Yeah, the past.
Museums.
And this is why the Ministry of Culture has never been considered as a very serious, critical ministry. It always suffered from the lowest budget in the country, any country in the world. Precisely because of this kind
Really?
of... Yes.
I mean, even like, you know, in Paris, or, you know, they have the Louvre, and in London, they have the British Museum. There seems to be a lot of...
Okay, I'm not supposed to be talking on behalf of European countries, but if you speak with any countries, whether it's United States or European countries, everybody complains about having a very lowest budget in the public sector. And so for UNESCO, this law that Indonesia has adopted and under your leadership was very interesting because it was the first time actually they departed from this classic approach to arts and culture and tried to place cultural resources as a sector for investment for culture, for the national development. So this is the reason why I'm very much a fan of this, well, your ministry, your approach, and the law. Now, of course, we fully agree that cultural resources is something to be tapped into. It's what constitutes the fundamental strengths of Indonesia. But the question is how, because in the reality, okay, it sounds very romantic to say yes, with culture and people's imagination, creativity, yes, you know, that should guide the development. But in the reality, we are actually talking about this vast informal sector, where the practitioners, most of the practitioners perhaps live in the rural sectors with very limited educational background and exposure to the training opportunities. And so perhaps 80% of them fall outside the government scheme of all this, supporting the SMEs and trainings. So the question, the biggest challenge and the question we have is how are we going to uplift this whole informal sector, which again is so diverse because the practice could be something very traditional to more contemporary like graphic design. And the stakeholders are maybe women with no educations or somebody who had a university degree. Now, how are we going to cater to that varied group of people for them to kind of, develop their own livelihood and the business out of their skills? So that is a big question. We don't have the answer. We are struggling to find a viable methodology for that. But what is clear is that it cannot be a classroom-based training that we used to do. It cannot be ad hoc workshop here and there. It has to be consistent. And this is perhaps one message to the government. Whatever you adopt, whatever you started, it requires a long-term investment. You won't see the result till 20 years down the line. You questioned and you asked about the example of Korea, how K-pop and Korean films are,
well, they're really running the world now. Aren't
Exactly.
they? And they're earning lots and lots of money
because
of
it's
it.
not an accident. It's not just like an accident. Because they invested for 20 years, 30 years, constantly, regardless of the change of the government. So this is perhaps a critical question to all of us, as now you're going to have a new government. to what extent the good move, this which has created already now, can be continued regardless of the power transitions.
Yeah. And Mary, I think you raise an important point about the micro, small, medium enterprises, because at the end of the day, these are sort of the creative industry players, and most of them are at subsistence level. The people who make souvenirs, who make handicrafts, and so on. And at the end of the day, I mean, we have what's called the creative industry. We even had like a ministry for creative industry. What is the best way of doing it so that it is integrated, so that the culture is something that is a job creation thing? And it cannot be just under sort of the Ministry of Culture. It has to be the whole ecosystem.
In fact, this is a very big question that all the government across the world, whether it's in Asia or Latin America or Africa, are questioning. We're all struggling to find the right methodology to uplift this informal sector. But my personal experience in UNESCO, having done a couple of pilot projects called Kita Muda Kreatif, it's a network of the young entrepreneurs living around the World Heritage Sites in Indonesia, the answer lies in the bottom-up approach. In this program, what we did is that we sat with the beneficiaries. We look at, we check what are the trainings they need.
We have Aramayani here, and she's exhibited, worldwide, and she's been sort of in the business for more than 30 years. As a matter of fact, we used to go to school together when we were children. She was always drawing, and now she's still doing it, and she is, very much in the forefront of Indonesia's not just artistic world, but also culturally. Now, share with us, when you perform, when you do your installations, when you do your exhibitions in New York or in Germany, in Australia, how do people see Indonesian, particularly artists, and what sort of message are you trying to impart to them? And, is this something that Indonesia can actually capitalize on, or at least, make our identity sort of more known worldwide?
Okay, thank you for having me here today. Yeah, well, lots of things to share, actually, but okay, we have short time. Yeah, I've been working on creating the so-called artwork, but it's not just limited to just art medium only. And personal expression only, but also I've been working with the communities in Indonesia as well as abroad. But basically, I try to connect this practice to the so-called local traditional wisdom. And what I have learned so far about this kind of culture and practice from my ancestor from Nusantara, it was really incredible kind of, civilization, yeah. I am very lucky to get the chance to learn about the detail of this cultural principle and practice in actually Tibetan monastery. They still preserve and even being practiced it, especially the Gelugpa sect led directly by Dalai Lama. Yeah. So I've been working with them since 2010 and ongoing until now. But then I also introduce and promote this kind of heritage to the world, because a lot of people, especially younger generation, coming from all over the world, they are worried today because of what is happening to our earth, to our environment, but also with the social cohesion. We have the war and genocide, basically. So it's really terrible. A lot of young people, they really concerned about
And
the
climate
future.
change as well, right? Climate
Yeah.
change, global warming, and
Right, right. Of course, climate change is so real. I mean, the impact is happening everywhere, all over the world, right? So I've been working with a lot of young people from various countries, like Germany, of course, because I've been teaching in Passau University since 2010. And this is not an art school, but Department of Southeast Asia, Faculty of Philosophy. And they're really, really interested in learning this cultural heritage from Nusantara, ancestor. Yeah? So, and then what I have been doing is not just on theoretical level, but also how to practice it as well. Because that's the basic principle of this so-called cultural wisdom from our ancestors from Nusantara. We are not only talking about theory, but we also have to practice it, yeah, and communally.
what is it that they're looking for? And when you talk about, you know, the Nusantara culture, what is it that you're offering and telling them? And why is it that young people are more and more, you know, interested in this kind of, you know, in the culture now as a philosophical thing? I mean, you know, now we are opening it up a little bit more, culture, not just the dances, the art, but it's actually a way of life, right?
Right. Well, as I mentioned, a lot of young people all over the world today worried about their future. Because, yeah, what is happening is like worrying, right? And then they started to think about what should we do, right? So when they got to learn about this local traditional wisdom, I mean, especially coming from ancestors of Nusantara, because it has been also introduced by Dalai Lama and the monks from Tibet, yes, for last 30 maybe years. And a lot of people, especially in Western or advanced country, got a chance to learn about it, yeah? So many of these education, well-educated educational system and well-educated group of people from the advanced country, they already learn, you know, about this and aware about the problem. For example, when I study in Seraje Monastery in India, I met monks and nuns who are Westerners, and they are mostly either scientists or philosophers. Yeah? And they are very serious. They really appreciate this heritage culture coming from Nusantara because of the wisdom. Because in modern system or Western system, the so-called wisdom is not there anymore. Right? So this is what I try to do with the young people. And they are really, really seriously wants to learn about this forgotten cultural, sorry, I said forgotten cultural heritage, because most Indonesians today, they don't know anymore.
Which is a shame, because we are the melting pot of all this very rich heritage we have. We have, you know, even in our language, you know, the Sanskrit, the Arabs, the Chinese. I mean, like you said, the Nusantara culture is really where we are. You know?
So the principle of unity in diversity, or Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, has been practiced since thousands of years ago.
And now the world are actually looking at us.
Of course, it's very
how
relevant
to, you know,
for today's situation, right?
Exactly, how to actually relive some of those values. And we have a young man here, our royalty, all of, how old are you now, 27 years old. Kanjeng Gusti, I mean, you're young, but at the same time, your family, your background, you're steeped, you know, deeply in the roots of the past, the tradition, the heritage, the Nusantara heritage. And yet we are at the crossroad. You are our face of the future. You are, you know, you're the digital native. Maybe you spend a lot of your time on TikTok or on IG. I don't know what. You know. How do you see this? How do you see the culture and the kind of wealth that you'd like us to sort of develop for our country? and of course your community and your people in Solo.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for having me. So, I've been coronated for the past 2 years and a half, since 2 years and a half, and it's been a very short journey as of now of learning and identifying problems, potentials, and the experience that I've had for the past 2 years and a half. We do realize that there are a lot of problems, but at the same time, we realize that there are so many amazing potentials from the culture that we have in the country. Bahilmar has mentioned before about the principles of protecting and promoting or developing. This is what we do as well in Mangkunegaran. We protect the culture, of course. We have our library, our manuscripts, our archives. We have our sources of information, our elder, our experiences as well that we have within the court. Now, promoting, developing, that's the tricky part. That's the challenging part. But at the same time, when we're speaking on the context of youth, that's where it's also fun for myself because I'm part of the youth generation. So
And you have a plan, right? You have a plan for the future. Right?
Exactly. The fun part is we in Mangkunegaran, we try to find the best formula possible to reach the youth. Why? Because of course the youth is the future. And when it comes to culture, the core aspect of it from our experience in Mangkunegaran is regeneration itself. How we bring the youth into the stage of the performances, of continuing our traditional ceremonies. This can only continue when the knowledge is passed down through the generations, and that's what we try to do exactly in Mangkunegaran. Now today in Mangkunegaran, we have been around for 267 years, 268 next year. So as you said before, it's relatively old.
Deeply rooted in the past.
But I myself, I'm still 27, so I'm just about 1/10 of Mangkunegaran itself, and I'm the 10th leader of Mangkunegaran today, where today, of course, our main principle, our main vision today is we see culture as not only the past, as a memory, as a nostalgia, but culture itself is an asset. It's our foundation for today and the future. Now, in Mangkunegaran itself, of course, we try our best to be an inspiration, a motivation, one of the role models as the centers of the Javanese culture. And in order to do that, of course, we focus our movements on research and development, just like most of the other organizations out there. Now, as the culture itself, as part of the research, that's the asset. And how we can grow that as the output, the packaging, how we present it. Now that's, again, as the youth generation of today with the technologies that we have today, we see technology and culture as something that's not a challenge, but rather it's more of a luxury, you can say. I mean, in Mangkunegaran itself, Mangkunegaran and technology, when it comes to our history, it has always grown hand in hand. Yeah. My great-grandfather was the founding father of radio of an Indonesian-owned radio station. He's also had many developments when it comes to infrastructure and many other aspects. So technology and culture, it should go hand in hand. If it doesn't, then in our eyes, then there's something wrong with the developments of the culture itself. So with social media, with the TikToks, the Instagram, if anything, it provides a whole reach that we've never had before, which is a global market. Before, we were only known to have the local, provincial, but now we have the global market. So it's a huge luxury and something that we try to maximize the best we can today.
Okay.
Yes.
Just out of curiosity, because young people now, they are so globalized and they have, easy access to all sort of cultures in the world. I'm curious to know, what is there, do they understand, when it says Indonesian culture, or like Yanni says, Nusantara, or the culture of the archipelago, do they really understand it, or are they concerned about it, or do they care about it, or that they care more about what everybody else around the world is,
Okay, so
getting up to? Because I see there's a lot of sort of, there's a lot of migrations now. People are mixing. It's a hodgepodge of everything. We've been like that since the beginning. And I mean, in Europe now, you see, all these different types of cultures, melting pots. But what about the young people themselves? Do they care about Indonesian culture?
I guess I'll answer the question in two parts. Firstly, when it comes to what is going on globally, I think, as you've mentioned before, with Korea or with Hollywood, with Bollywood, and other global cultural movements out there.
Over the U.S., the culture of the pizza, spaghetti,
Yes.
and burgers, and
Yes. Well, for myself, I don't see that as something negative, actually. If anything, for me, globalization is something positive if we can capitalize on it. Now, the thing about Korea and all these amazing countries with their movements, they managed to capitalize on it. Now, what's been done there, for me, again, it's not a challenge, but for me, it's more of a motivation that if you actually manage and develop the culture that we have, we see how immense the potential is. So, if anything, we have a living proof that we can use as a source of inspiration and a source of motivation. And in Indonesia, of course, we have all these amazing culture, how diverse we are, how amazing and how long our history is. Of course, I do not think that our potential is in any way less than all these other countries in the world now. That's firstly. Secondly, when it comes to the youth generation, I see a positive trend, actually, when it comes to the youth today. For example, in Mangkunegaran, I think Mangkunegaran itself, when it comes to tourism, for example, and the visitors of our traditional ceremonies, it's always the same. It's still the same place, still the same buildings, still the same ceremonies. But today, from the numbers itself, it's so much higher than what we've had in the past. Our traditional ceremony of Satu Suro last year, of the Javanese New Year, it's the most visitors that we have. And from the data that we have, we would say that around 40 to 50% is actually the Gen Z millennial generation. So, and again, when it comes to social media, as we've mentioned before, like in TikTok and Instagram, back in the day, like we've only had discussions on the aesthetics of the building, of the architecture, of the, for example, like the photo spots or
the selfie spots.
the selfie spots. But today, the discussion is actually beyond that. The audience, they start asking about the history, about the traditions, about the arts, about the culture, about even the tata krama. So I think the discussion, the interest, the thirst and hunger for this in the youth generation is so much more than it was before. And again, as a youth, myself as youth today, this is the time for us to be able to reach them, because I see myself as hopefully as an effective bridge between the old culture and the new generation. So we'll see how it goes in the coming years, hopefully.
It's good to hear. It certainly brings an air of optimism. Summer, British Council. How do you see? What do you think of Indonesian culture, or our discussion so far, and where does and it's interesting, when we talk about Britain. I used to grow up in the UK in London, but the multiculturalism in London. You had the Prime Minister who's Indian, and you also had the Mayor who's Indian, and now I see you're representing the British Council. You're definitely not your run-of-the-mill English, white guy. So, just your thoughts on.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me here. And Desi, I must admit, when I saw the topic, I smiled, because this is basically our bread and butter at the British Council, because we are the UK's international organisation for cultural relations and educational opportunities. So we absolutely see the transformative power of culture and arts and education in shaping societies, creating opportunities for individuals and communities. And also, the word legacy is really important, because, we are celebrating the British Council's 90th anniversary this year worldwide. So I think the existence of the British Research Council as a cultural organization is a testament to this argument that we could build a true legacy through cultural transformation, through the cultural power. But exactly how to do it, I mean, based on what everybody has said, again, a lot I can resonate with. I think let's start with the youth engagement, because I think, you know, perhaps a few years ago, you know, maybe 10, 20 years ago, when you could talk about culture, a lot of people think about traditional culture. A lot of people think about showcasing. But actually, how do you inject new energy into the culture? How do you energize the youth so that they feel excited and wanting to not only appreciate and respect the culture, the traditions, but also wanting to amplify it, wanting to promote it? I think that's really important. In the last year, we published a report called Next Generation, which is based on a survey we did with 3,000 young people across Indonesia. So what came out, so this is about us finding out about their aspiration and expectation for the future. What's really interesting is that while there is a significant amount of optimism, the youth are also very concerned about the quality of education, climate change, tolerance, recognition. So how do we identify their needs? How do we equip them with the skills they need to thrive in the 21st century is a key question, I think, for all of us to really think about seriously. And I would argue within that skill set, intercultural competence is so important. So we talk about unity through diversity. If you don't even understand each other's culture, even in this country, how can you trust each other? How can you do business with each other? How can you sit down and talk with sincerity to each other? So I think in that regard, it's really important for us to think about the cultural education and be very specific and targeted, thinking about the skills development for the youth and what's in it for them, thinking about how they want to be responsible citizens for the future. But Hilman talked about cultural resilience. How can we make them more resilient so that they have the confidence, skills and expertise to become the future leaders we expect them to become? I think the second thing I want to highlight is creative economy. I think when we talk about culture, it's all falls within the ballpark of the creative economy. And I must applaud Indonesia's effort, because we have been working in this area very closely with Indonesia for the last 10 years. And it's great to see, for example, in 2022, the creative economy in Indonesia already contributes 1.28 quadrillion rupiah, which is around $84 billion to the GDP, and that consists of 6.5%. However, if you break that down, then you'll see that that focuses on mainly on culinary, tourism, fashion and crafts, which suggests that there is greater potential for growth in the areas such as music, film, performing arts, visual arts and etc. UK artists and cultural organizations could learn from Indonesia. And this year has been particularly exciting. So for example, Ibu here has been commissioned by Tate Modern. Voice of Butchprot has premiered at Glastonbury in the UK. That's extraordinary. I think that also helps to build that confidence and pride amongst Indonesian people, how Indonesian culture should not only be celebrated here, but also globally, and what we can do more to contribute to that.
Okay, just very quickly, Shama, how do you rate us, Indonesia, in our cultural diplomacy? Because this is something that we're always saying, you know, we're very proud of that.
I think I think from my personal perspective, a great effort, and there's a whole lot more that can be done. Because, I mean, one thing I've always said to colleagues and friends back in the UK is I really want to develop that Indonesia literacy back in the UK. When we talk about Indonesia, lots of my friends, oh, Bali. What more? That's one of the 17,000 islands, and there is so much rich cultural heritage and innovation and creativity here that I think is not always well understood and appreciated. But that changes when people come here for a visit. Every visitor I've had in Indonesia went away feeling energized, inspired. So how can we create more opportunities for mobility in both directions and connections between Indonesian people and people from the rest of the world, and really showcasing the rich cultural heritage here and focus on capacity building so that people have that confidence and expertise and skills to promote Indonesian culture, I think will help us amplify that richness from here.
Okay, and before I throw this to the floor, and please think up of, questions or comments, and I would like to get everybody's engagement. So just get, your questions and your perspectives ready. But Hilmar, some interesting things that have risen out of this discussion. But I want to go back to our, main topic, just transforming Indonesia through cultural power, which means that the right policy is very important. And the way that culture itself is managed in Indonesia is very important. And I've sort of lived long enough and through quite a few governments to know there's always been chopping and changing when it comes to dealing with. Is culture, is it a part of education? No, it's part of, culture, education, high, research and so on. And then there's culture as what is creative economy, or is it tourism? But I think there has to be, it cannot be partial. It cannot be every government changes and, what should be done that can actually create, from the wealth that we already have, so that it's translated to the wealth of the people and the wealth of the country. How?
So looking at the immense wealth that we have, the amount of work that should be done in order to manage this enormous wealth, it's only logical to have a separate institution that takes care of culture. So that has been debated for many, many years. Even during the debate on the law itself, the parliament actually wanted to put that into the law in an article, but was rejected because that's the prerogative of the president. So, but that's been there. I mean, the idea's been there. But more than that, I think to consolidate all these different functions under the coordination of this institution is essential. You have tourism, you have creative economy, you have all these cultural related activities. I'm not saying that it should be like a super ministry or anything, but to get these different institutions connected. And we can learn from, for example, Korea. There, the ministry is like a Ministry of Culture, Sports, and different functions, under one ministry. But the real energy and the real institutions that are actually doing the actual work are these agencies. They have a separate agency for creative content. They have agency for film, music, etc. Like tens of these different agencies responsible for a particular field, but all connected and under the coordination of them. So that's, I think, what is lacking. I mean, our tendency is to create a separate institution for a separate function, ending up having different, and I also always ask to
creating
people,
more problems than they solve.
Right, like artists. But what do you think? Whatever institutional arrangement you have, but provide a service that we can actually use. So our discussion in this transition period is also about that. Like, how do you would serve the interest of the cultural practitioners best, and that should be the starting point of what the institution should look like, the kind of service that you provide. Be it institutional support, financial support, then you just create. You probably don't need a ministry if you have a strong program. So all these discussions are now in place, and we hope for the best. Of course, decisions will be made, but my job is to provide all the information needed, based on my experience and all the things that we've done. So let's hope that in the end there will be a decision about that. But the second thing is, I think, investment. I mean, you're right. I mean, we all raised the same issue. But here comes the important lesson also from Korea, public and private partnership. It's the cables that also supported that. And we have that kind of financial strength, right? But what we need now is kind of a policy that would provide incentive for the private sector to step into this, to really help and realize the potentials that we actually have. And I've been talking to private sector people. They said, yeah, we are interested. No, I mean, we like the idea of using cultural power as our next, but it takes time to transform our business sector moving into that direction as
We
well,
don't have much
right?
time. Actually, I remember, having this kind of discussion like 30 years ago, and I don't think we've moved very far from from there. But at least, we are trying, Pak Hilmar.
Yes, but yeah, the hope is also with the young entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Yeah, because they have that kind of like creative environment.
Okay, let's have 3 questions first. Put your hand. Yes, we have 1 at the back, and 2 and 3. Yes, if you could just quickly identify yourself. Yes.
Yes, hello, my
and
name is
who would you like
Christina.
to answer your question?
My name is Christina. I'm the partnership specialist for UNESCO. Moya is my dear colleague, and I have to admit culture is one of the subjects that are closest to my heart. And actually, I have a question for all of you from the government side, from British Council, and also the young generation. In your opinion, what type of activities and programs should be carried out to secure the transmission of the traditions from the old generation to the new generation, to the young generation? Because it's our duty today to secure the transmission of these traditions to the young generation, to secure the identity of the new generation. Without culture, we are nobody. We have no roots, we have no identity. However, we notice by talking with different partners, by talking with different beneficiaries, the fact that the young generation does not have the interest in continuing the batik producing or the tenun producing or crafting or the traditional art. They are more interested to move to the city or have different activities. What could be the solution to secure this transmission?
Thank you, Christina.
Hello, hi. My name is Helianti Hilman from Javara, Indonesia. First, I would like to congratulate Pak Hilmar Farid for his leadership in the last 10 years, because this is the first time that cultural policy and programs has been very inclusive to also include beyond the normal arts performances, but also include food, fabrics, textiles, so many different aspects of life architecture. I've been working the last 15 years in bringing back forgotten food biodiversity and cultural culinary heritage. And this is the first time, the last 5 years, we have been privileged to work with the Directorate General in promoting and preserving the food culture. Now, the question is this, because I was intrigued by the statement of Mrs. Siba related with it's not an overnight process, right? It will take a long time for us to get to where, for example, Korea is at. And we're talking about legacy to legacy. So my question will be, Pak Hilmar, and also probably others, I would like to have the opinion, how to have the programs that you have put as a very good foundation to survive within the changes of the government over the years. Because we want it to survive for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years to see that we are progressing, not decreasing.
Great point. Because continuity is not the strength of our country when it comes to changing of the guards, right? Okay, we have, yes, please.
Thank you. My name is Riyadi from Tenggara Strategic, a research institution. This is not a question though, this is a comment, just to add to the discussion. So we happen to conduct a study on culture, the path of culture, and we take 4 case studies. One is Museum Nasional, another one is traditional cloth, another one is Subak, the irrigation system in Bali, another one is traditional herb and wellness industry. And we calculate the economic value of the contribution of these industries and also the social contribution of these industries. So if you, in our studies, the Museum Nasional, the economic contribution is 372,000 rupiah, but the asset value is 2 trillion rupiah, but that's smaller than the actual value. And then the traditional cloth, we calculate only from the existing data. This is the export of Indonesian traditional cloth. The value is 10 trillion rupiah, which is quite big. if that's not including the local trade of traditional clothes, which is much, much bigger. And then for Subak, the contribution for one small village in Jatiluwe, we conducted in one village in Bali, the contribution is 50 billion rupiah for one village. It's much bigger than the government contribution, 1 billion rupiah a year. And then the other one is the biggest one is actually the traditional herbs and wellness. The industry contributes about 58 trillion rupiah. My point here actually not the economic contribution, but more on the social contribution. We calculate the social return on investment of these industries. For the National Museum, the contribution, if you invest $1, the social return will be $5. So in terms of education, in terms of social coherence, and so on and so forth. And then the biggest social contribution is actually Jatiluwe. If you invest $1, you will get $29. But the interesting thing is, for traditional clothes and wellness, the social contribution is more beneficial to the women, which is actually employing a lot of women. So that's actually the value of culture. So my point here is to add quantification numbers to culture, and I think I will agree with Pa Hilmal Farid that you need a separate institution to promote culture, to nurture culture, and also maybe to promote it overseas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
so I think the next government.
Thank you so much, and I think
you.
you deserve a big hand for that, because this is the kind of information that we need. That culture can be a job-creating thing, and it can improve people's lives. It can create wealth, and despite whatever government policies, people do have that motivation. So maybe you can share with us later your studies. But okay, who would like to answer a question we have from Christina? How to make sure that the transmission is from the older generation. So maybe you can start with you. Kanjeng Gusti.
Thank you so much, Christina, for the question. Well, I speak from an institution that practices the culture, so not from a policy-making perspective, of course, but the way we see it is, first, it starts with interest. Second, it's about experience. And third, it's deeper than that, how culture can become the foundation, the core of an individual's growth. So, well, firstly, when it comes to interest, when it comes to the youth generation of today, of course, being a youth myself, I try to position myself and Mangkunagaran. We do our actions not only from what we feel is right, but what we feel is right from both ends. Because at the end of the day, culture and the transmission of knowledge is of course, it goes hand in hand. Now, the transmission of knowledge itself, it all begins with, of course, internally we have our knowledge, our research, and whatnot. But at the end of the day, the transmission of knowledge, it can only occur when there is access, when there is inclusivity of that information. That's exactly what we do for the past 2.5 years in Mangkunagaran. We transform Mangkunagaran into a home of culture, a hub of culture where the public can attend and not only see the culture that we have, but also indulge and become the part of the culture itself. People can learn at our library. People can experience the traditional arts and the ceremonies as well. So we invite the people to come. Whereas maybe back in the day, maybe the royal family and the public, there is always a very high wall.
Right?
There's
very
a gap.
Hierarchical.
Yes, but with us today, we see the presence, our presence of the royal family as a symbol of the past, but also as a driver, an enabler of today and the future. So with this principle, we drive the interest of the public through the activities and the programs that we do as well at our palace. So we have the palace itself. Of course, the palace is quite unique, something you can't find anywhere else. So that's already one point. But we realize of course, that's not enough. At the end of the day, just as information, for example, like back in the day before, we were speaking pre-COVID, so before COVID, we have a visitor of, let's say, an X amount of visitor pre-COVID. And this is post-COVID. We have at least 4 to 5 times people being interested in coming to our palace. This is the same exact building, but the difference is the value that's being instilled in the building. The most important thing about the culture is the message, not the form, but it's more of the value. So the form, in my eyes, it can always adapt and evolve in accordance to the needs of the times. But the most important thing is delivering the values. I think that's the core of it. Yeah. Building culture is building people. It takes building a generation to build a sense of belonging, a sense of pride, a sense of ownership towards the culture. But we go slowly little by little, starting with interest, experience, and then I think hopefully from there the process.
And a lot of posting on Instagram.
That would help as well. That would help. Yes.
Anybody else would like to add? Yes, Chiba.
Kristen already knows my answer, but for the interest of the audience, our answer is that you have to create a sense of future for the young people. Why the young generation do not want to continue practicing the ancestral knowledge is because they have seen the struggles, financial, economic struggles, social struggles of their fathers. So why would they want to choose to inherit those knowledge when even their parents are not encouraging, right? And this is why what the government of Indonesia has started is very important, linking, and creating a transition from the traditional knowledge into a viable creative economy. So that is an answer.
Actually, when you mentioned batik, right? I remember, the time when batik is really sort of like old-fashioned and so on. But amazing how you can transform batik now. If I go on air, I would choose good batik because of the style, because it's part of a trend and it's something that's desirable. So you can, have that kind of transformation. So anybody else wants to ask? Yes.
Yeah, sure.
Add on that, I mean.
Yeah, I just want to add to what others have said. I think from what we have experienced, what has worked, I think 2 more aspects. One is the program's activities should really focus on capacity building, and it should be a holistic approach because we have cultural practitioners who are very good at the cultural practice, the crafts or, sort of how to preserve the traditions. But they may not necessarily have the skills to market it, to use social media, to promote it. So how do we also make sure they are equipped with the business skills they need so that not only are they brilliant, artists, they also have a way to communicate, articulate it, and promote it to the rest of Indonesia and the rest of the world. I think that will create jobs, that will make it a viable business, and that will make it more incentive for people to want to participate in this sector.
And I think that the great thing about Indonesia is most of us, we're all really proud of our culture. We like defend it to the death, and that's our culture and it's ours, So, building on that, we should actually, protect, promote, but also manage it. There's a question from Helianti. How to make sure that this is something that is of a long-term thing, not just, chopping and changing and as every government changes?
Well, there is a technocratic answer to that. Technocratic answer would be to integrate all these policies, practices that we find good into a national policy level. We are now in a crucial moment where we will define the next 5-year development planning project. So it's integrated into that. To ensure it, of course, it has to be translated into an annual budget, etc. That would be the responsibility of the coming government. But I think what is crucial is also participation from the community. Yeah, if they think this is a service that they like and think it's good, then they have to voice that. No? So they have to demand that this is actually our right to have a good public service in the field of culture, etc. So that's essential.
Absolutely.
So I do agree with Kanjeng Gusti about regeneration to ensure that the knowledge is not lost. But the second aspect, I think, is, and Moe has raised about that, is the question of relevance. Like, how relevant is that to our lives today? And this is, I think, where innovation, creative economy kicks in. Yeah, I mean, we need to work together with people at the creative sector to make all these, and then think of these great cultural heritage as IPs, as intellectual properties. And then you can start from there to think that how to develop that.
Let's have another set of questions. I'd like to get everybody. Yes, at the back. And can we have some more, please? Yori, why don't you also? So we have one or two. No, maybe let's have the lady at the back first. And then Payori. And then, do we have anybody here? Yes. Okay. Go ahead. Yes, please stand up.
Thank you, Bu Desi. My name is Ratri Anindya Jati. I'm a director of the Indonesian Dance Festival. It's a 34-year-old international contemporary dance festival in Indonesia, the longest standing in Asia. Anyway, so I'm part of may I perhaps represent a little bit of the younger generation. I'm 10 years above Kanjeng Gusti, but still young, still learning. But I would like just to note that I think when we talk about culture, it's also what we feel and what we think as a group, as a country, as a nation. And I think when there were, at the beginning, we talked about how South Korea was successful and how the US, of course, since the beginning of cultural mass production. And with Indonesia, because within the festival, it's called the IDF, we program with curators, and the big question that we always ask is, because we are used to working within the contemporary practice using the Western textbook, so a lot of the answers that the questions that we're trying to ask and get answers is what is actually the contemporary form of Indonesian contemporary dance without adhering or without referring to how the Westerners do it. And so I think in terms of, Indonesians are very proud of who we are, but there is a duality in that, because when we're confronted with Westerners, with English speaking, because there's always still an inferiority that we are, I believe now, the younger generation is exiting that. And from that, then we can do away from being consumers of K-pop, from being consumers of Bollywood and Hollywood, and we create our own productions. But so that's my first 2 cents of this. But in order to create this production, and Bang Hilmar has been our friend, and we talk a lot about how to sustain the IDF in the next generation. And I think with communality that Bu Aram Mahyani mentioned, I think because through practice, myself, I'm part of the group that is always looking for funding to keep the sustainability going, how to pay people, how to pay the young generation to keep working in the arts, because now there is a big interest there.
I think this is a very, very good point that you're raising, and I'm glad to see that you're still keeping at it, even though it's like struggling to get funding.
Yeah.
But if you look in other countries, it's all about patronage, right?
Yes.
It's all about the philanthropists and people who are interested in arts.
Yeah, that's also the next thought was how the U.S. cultural sector is maybe rather more not successful, because again, that's a post-colonial mindset. If we keep thinking that we're behind, because with this culture policy, actually we're much more forward than even some European countries. Yes, so in the U.S. the model is that the philanthropy sector is very big, and in the Europe is the culture, the government. So what is the formulate for Indonesian sector? Yeah,
Great
that's
point.
the
Thank
question. And yeah, thank you so much.
Dari,
Yeah.
how are you?
Fine. My name is Yuri Antar. My background is architect. I have an opinion. Indonesia have 2 different culture, modern and traditional. The modern is come from writing culture, and the traditional is come from oral culture. But modern culture always kill our traditional culture. So we need a bridge, how to connect traditional culture and modern culture. How our traditional culture not live in the past, but how to bring our traditional culture to the future. It's very important. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Great, great point. Yes. Can we have a microphone there?
Hi, my name is Ricky Pesik, and I'm now with Injourney Tourism Development Corporation and also with Indonesian Heritage Agency. They're looking after all the museums and cultural sites across Indonesia. My opinion is that we are far behind left by this what we call cultural and creative industry global landscapes. When we still talking about, we have so many resources, so many rich, so the most diverse country in the world, and we have millions or billions of possibility to be monetized or capitalized to bring up our economy, but actually we are still invisible
level,
in the landscape of culture. Like for example, you're talking about batik. Yes, batik is everywhere, but probably if batik in China or batik in South Korea, probably now it will be everywhere in the world.
We already have batik from China here as well.
Yeah. I mean, now, where is batik in New York? Where is batik in London? Where is batik in Tokyo? Where is batik in Shanghai? How we transform it, become global, and then we can make advancement of culture, contribute economic. So this is the biggest issue, I think, the biggest challenge, how it can bring Indonesia become the main player in the global ecosystems in order to make it. Because I can imagine when this new institution established, the biggest challenge is how coordinate and synchronize the policy within for the employment.
Forever.
1.5 years and not yet doing anything. I think that's very important to make a prioritize by new administrative. How to make it faster, how to make it.
That's the question, how to make it faster. Well, we hope for the best.
Because we need to.
Well, thank you for all your perspectives. No, I'd like to, use this last round of comments, also for you to have your sort of last remarks on what would you like to see being continued, or what should the next government prioritize when it comes to managing culture. Let's start with you, and we go one by one.
Gosh, I think there's a lot, but if I may offer, from our observation, a few things that we would really hope that the next government would continue. To start with, investment. So I think that has been highlighted by everybody, and then we have seen that how some of the cultural practitioners really struggle, especially during the pandemic. So that's sustained investment, not only from the government, also from the private sector, that public-private partnership to make people see the true value of investing on culture is really important. And then finally, international collaboration, because I think in a more globalized and seemingly divided world, I think that international collaboration is key to strengthen that understanding and trust between us, and also create new ideas and new platforms for culture to really thrive.
Okay. Yanni, your thoughts, please.
Yeah, well, I think this community empowerment is very important, and of course need the support from the government. Yeah, this modern and traditional can be also connected. I mean, that's what I have been doing in my practice, right? And the community is also very happy to do it, in fact, because they realize when their knowledge of the traditional culture connected to the modern knowledge, science, technology, actually people are happy. Yeah. So this is actually possible to be done. This is just an example of what I have been doing, and I want to inform you that this is actually possible to be done.
And culture is a uniting, force. That's what we need to remember. This is, it's lovely. It should be what everybody practices. Kanji, what are your plans, your wish list, your message for the next government?
Yes, well, my hopes would be actually just as the fundamentals of it. I guess just 2 points. First is focus on research, and the second is know what to do with your research, basically. So going to the first point, do your research. Culture and knowledge, of course, they're very intertwined. Culture is knowledge itself. And for the culture, for the regeneration to occur, you need to do your research, you need to do your protection of the information and the recordings and the documentations and whatnot. But aside from that, culture itself is also a game of storytelling, a game of narrative. Storytelling and narrative is based on the information and based on the research, because as you go into your research, this is what I experienced myself in Mangkunegaran as well. Once you dive deeper and deeper and deeper, you'll find even more and more and more values that can be developed into so many different things, which then leads to my second point, and this will also probably relate to Ma Ratri and Pa Yori before. Knowing what to do with this knowledge of this so-called traditional heritage knowledge is fundamental in my eyes, because this will become, if I would symbolize the cultural ecosystem as simple as a tree, for example. A tree can only grow to be a very big tree when the roots are strong, of course, and the knowledge and the research, this will be the roots, and how we can then water the roots to become a very big and a very strong tree. This will also relate to how we manage this information. Managing this information, as I've also mentioned before, would also very much relate on adapting it to the times of today, and also, most importantly as well, the people. Yeah. We have to see things in two perspectives. We cannot only develop on what's the best from our eyes or what's best on back in the day. You've also mentioned before that culture, it always evolves and it always changes.
Sure, many points have been already said, but if I may add additional points, two things. One, want to see Indonesia continue playing the role of this place of gathering, international place for gathering and a free exchange of ideas. In your time, you started this World Cultural Forum that was hosted in Indonesia. And I think this is another way of promoting Indonesia to the rest of the world, not only about promoting your national culture, but also conveying yourself as a place where everybody can come and exchange and get the new opportunities. So Indonesia's role as a convener of the international cooperation, that's one. And then, of course, I can elaborate in which domain, like World Heritage Inscription, Intangible Cultural Heritage Nomination. There are many, many opportunities to do jointly as a Southeast Asia, where Indonesia really can play the leadership role. Second point is artistic freedom. The freedom for artists to express and, explore their creativity without fearing.
Without having to be a refugee.
You might be probably not aware, but Indonesia has actually made, is quite a bit advanced in embracing the concept of artistic freedom. So Indonesia actually made a step forward. There's a civil society organization working on monitoring or the status of artistic freedom under your blessing, which is quite innovative, actually, quite wonderful things. So I hope this freedom of, atmosphere of freedom to explore would continue, because that is a great asset.
And that's also our wealth.
Indonesia has.
Not just artistic freedom, press freedom as well.
Exactly.
I think you mentioned two great things. This is our asset, which can be talking about brands. It can be Indonesia's brands, like the Bhinneka Tunggal Ika. That should be our brand, right? You know, the unity in diversity. And the other one is gotong royong. I mean, look at all, you know, there's so many selfish kind of, you know, things going on around the world. We can be a model in that. But Hilmar, I'd like to give you the last words of conclusion, and also brand Indonesia. What is the best way? Because you need, in order to create a brand, because that's what it is basically, like Hollywood is a brand, South Korea is a brand, now China is a brand with all their branded, you know, we should be a brand, but how?
Well, the key word really would be diversity, you know? And we have kind of a different trajectory. I imagine from South Korea, for example, it's a homogeneous society, one ethno-linguistic group, yeah? Great potentials, great everything, but still, I mean, compared to Indonesia with all its complexity, etc. So really build up on that. But now we are still looking at the tip of the iceberg, you know? And I think Yori's question is really relevant here. It entails a process of relearning and unlearning, because so much has been framed into our modern understanding of things, which then basically reduces the wealth into some knowledgeable or recognizable items. No? It's a shame. I mean, we should do more actually into that direction. So research, education, capacity building is one thing. Institutional arrangement, I share the enthusiasm with Ricky for sure. We have to go fast. And I think, based on my experience at the ministry, I'm the first non-civil servant holding this position. So, and I think we need more people from a professional background. I'm not saying that civil servants are not professional. I encounter a large number of my friends, fellows, civil servants who are really professional, good at their work, etc., etc. But we need new energy injected into these institutional arrangements to have a assemblage, if you like, of agencies, institutions, so really know what they are doing. And they can actually survive all these political changes. Look at South Korea. They have like political drama for the last 25 years, right? Changes in the government, direction, etc., etc. But if you look at the creative sector, it increases all the time. So there is a way for them to deal, to kind of protect this from political interference so much. And one of the key things is to inject like professionals, putting them at the driver's seat so they can run the organizations with the support of the government. So what should a future organization responsible for culture do? Three things: regulate, execute, empower. No? And regulate, one key thing is don't over-regulate. Yeah? Because artistic, back to the question of artistic freedom, etc., etc. But what we need is actually a strong fiscal policy. So not much cultural policy anymore. It's in place already. But fiscal policy, like tax incentives, and all these issues that would provide incentive for the private sector to come in. Execute, try to do less. Yeah, try to reduce all these like state-directed festivals, etc. I've been telling this like the whole time to my fellow colleagues at the office. What we need to do is to help people to execute and to actually do the work. So through financial support, institutional support, etc., etc. And the last thing I think is empower. This is the key thing that that organization should actually do. They really look at the potentials, understand the landscape that exists, look at the human resources that are available, and start from there.
Not enough chatting, exchange of ideas,
exactly.
Collaboration, like what we're doing in this platform, basically.
And I think in managerial terms, there are so many innovations right now. I mean, you have meetings where people don't really know, no agenda, but ending up having a more fruitful discussion, right? Rather than having a tall agenda on the list and then everyone just like perform what they are supposed to do. So be more open, be more inclusive would be the main message, no, for a future.
Ladies and gentlemen, what an enriching and thought-provoking conversation we've had today. As we conclude the Big Idea Forum, we're reminded that culture is not merely a reflection of who we are. It's a beacon that lights the way forward, guiding us toward a future where our identity, creativity, and traditions form the very foundation of our progress. And on behalf of the Big Idea Forum, I want to express once again our deepest appreciation to our distinguished speakers for their invaluable insights. Pak Hilmar, thank you so much. Mumoy, Yani, Summer, and Kanjeng Gusti, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. And of course, to you, our audience, I would like to thank each and every one of you for your active participation and engagement. Like I always say in this platform, collaboration is key to producing good policies. Thank you, and see you in the next Big Idea Forum. Bye-bye.
Terima kasih, Anda baru saja menyaksikan The Big Idea Forum in association with